Hi, everyone. So I just want to talk to you about the execution system. This is the first course that we do kind of in the higher apprenticeship. And the reason that we do this is essentially that whenever you do any kind of work, you're actually doing two things. One thing is you're doing the planning. So you're deciding what you're going to do. Sorry, one second. Ugh, okay, whatever. One thing is you're going to decide what to do, and the other thing is you're actually going to do it. And so what we want is to be able to rely on our future selves to complete the task that we assign them, right? So in some sense, you're playing two roles. अरे यार क्या हो गया? Okay. You're playing two roles. One is the role of a manager who's assigning work, and one is the role of what in industry kind of terms is called individual contributor or IC, but essentially the person who actually does the work, right? So we're going to split these two things up, and the outcome that we're hoping for is to be able to completely trust our future selves to be able to get the work that we assign to them done. Um, and so there's a few different kind of parts to this, but we'll talk about them now. So let me walk you through the execution course. And you can read this, but hopefully this will just make it a little bit easier than if you had to kind of read it just on your own. Okay. So the idea is here is essentially that we always have a thoughtful say in what we're going to be doing with our time. Um, that's essentially it, right? We want to have agency or a say in what we do. So the ability to execute or to get things done is the most foundational trait. It's only once we have the ability to execute tasks that we can explore all other skills and systems. If our execution system isn't solid, everything else is built on unstable ground. And what I mean by this is that if you can't trust your future self to complete work that's assigned to them, it's very hard for you to plan long term or to, yeah. And then you're just kind of struggling with just trying to keep up with your basic tasks and just like managing your goals and your timelines. So if you can get this system to be really good, where you can just complete tasks in a way where you are being thoughtful about what you're doing, that's a huge kind of superpower almost. Honestly, if you can just do this one thing really well, you will be ahead of like 95 or 97% of the people kind of in the workforce, because most people are just stuck trying to figure out how to get their stuff done, and they're not really able to kind of move forward from there. So this is where we're going to start. And yeah. Um, yeah, so you might wonder, why do we even need this? Haven't we been doing stuff, our whole lives? Um, the answer is that when we do work that's kind of, yeah, basically we're relying on other people to tell us what work to do. And we're only often doing that work because if we don't do it, then there's external kind of consequences, right? So when we're young, we get homework from our school, or we're in college, we have exams and things like that. And if we don't do those things, then why does this keep cutting out? When we don't do those things, then there's consequences, right? People, you'll fail exams, or you'll get told off for not doing your homework, or something else will happen, right? So we're dependent on external structures if we're not kind of, we don't have our own independent system. And essentially, we're only doing what other people are telling us. We're not really being able to do anything that we really want to do in a structured and planned way. Um, yeah. And also, our goals will change kind of over the course of our lives. And if we can't direct what we're doing, it's going to be very hard for us to achieve those goals. And we're essentially just going to be stuck doing the same things that everybody else is doing, because everybody is listening to the same kind of set of people, which is your parents, your school teachers when you're younger, your college, when you're slightly older, and then eventually like your employers and managers. You'll just kind of end up in this and not be able to break out and kind of do things that you want to do. Um, yeah. Especially important if you want to be able to like lead or like do your own work, then this is something that's really important. Um, Also, this is a extremely sought after trait kind of in most jobs. Whenever A lot of job descriptions say things like self-starter, independent, proactive, self-motivated, owner mentality. These all point to the ability to be able to get stuff done on your own. And essentially, if you can contribute independent value, if you can go and like contribute to an organization on your own without being like excessively managed or told what to do, you'll always be valued, right? You'll always be a net positive for the organization wherever you go. And so it's something that's really, really desirable, even in the job market. And if you can demonstrate this, which you will do as a part of doing this course, then that's something that, you know, people who have a good kind of grasp on what it means to hire will always really value that. Yeah. Especially important if you're doing roles with a high degree of autonomy, uh, academia, leadership, entrepreneurship, freelancing. These are all fields where you need to have your own system because, you know, just by the nature of the work, there's no one telling you kind of what to do. Uh, so that's the goal, right? To build a reliable, adaptable execution system that serves as the foundation to everything else we want to achieve. So how are we going to build the system? There's some characteristics of good systems which we need to talk about. We'll just talk about the first one actually, and it's just resilience. And so this refers to the ability of your system to bounce back from being stressed or squeezed, right? So things are going to happen. You're going to go on vacation. You know, family emergencies are going to come up. You're going to get sick. Lots of disruptions to your work cycle are going to happen. But what we want is a system that kind of springs back into shape very, very quickly, and so that even if there's like a big disruption, that system then kind of comes back and starts working again. So that's one of the things we'll be going for with this system that we build. And the way that we're going to build systems, let's talk about this briefly. Um, so every system, and this is kind of independent of execution system. This is for everything, right? Um, and so you're going to have to build two things. One is the thing that actually does the work, and one is the thing that runs the system that does the work. Okay. Um, so one is system to do the work, the other one is to maintain the first system, make sure it's working well, fix it if it's broken, and improve it. And so the first system we'll call the doing system, right? Which in this case is like execution. And the feedback system is the one that kind of guides and drives this other system. So for example, if you want to keep, you know, have healthy plants at home, one thing the doing system will involve watering them, pruning them, you know, maybe fertilizing them, all of that stuff. The feedback system, which will tell you how your doing system is working, is looking at the plants and seeing, oh, are they droopy? Are they yellow? You know, is there anything wrong? Which tells me that I need to change my doing system, right? Maybe your plants look like the leaves are all rotten, and that's telling you, oh, I'm overwatering. So then you go back and change your doing system so that you're watering maybe less often, right? In your exercise routine, maybe the goal is like to have kind of, you know, a certain kind of weight and a certain kind of like strength. And so the doing system is going to the gym, running, doing all of that. The feedback system, which tells you how your doing system is working, is things like your weight, your strength gains, your soreness, your energy levels, right? If you keep an eye on this, it'll tell you, oh, is my doing system working well? Am I kind of, you know, doing this enough? All of that stuff. And then there's an example for social media as well. So this is what it kind of looks like, right? So there's a planning. So you're going to say, oh, this is what I want to do. Then you're going to do the thing. And then you're going to review how did that doing go. And then based on that, you're going to do your next set of planning. Um, right? So, and then the doing system is actually the execution system in this example, right? So in all the systems, this feedback system is more important because the feedback system is what will bring resiliency. That's what will kind of make changes to the doing system, and that's what will keep kind of improving the doing system and kick off the doing system, right? It's only once you've planned that you can then do something. So hopefully you understand at this point what the execution and feedback system are and why we need both to build a new kind of way to work. And so the way that we do that is we just talk about stage one, which is just this is an experiment. Okay, just give the system a try. This is not to say you need to be kind of married to this your whole life, but just see what it's like. Just get a real lived experience of what it is to do this, do kind of things this way. Okay. Um, And so, yeah, think of it as a no pressure experiment. Try it once, make notes on how it feels, and we'll adjust it to make it a better fit. Okay. Uh, so now let's start with stage one for the execution system. So hopefully it makes sense that this is like the meta way to build systems. This will kind of be applicable across all your systems courses. And this is the actual execution system, which is the first system course that we're going to do, right? Um, okay. So again, we're going to have three phases, like every system: planning, doing, and reviewing. Uh, the first prerequisite to this is using your calendar. Okay. This is really important that you have a calendar and that you know how to use it and that you kind of come to rely on it to tell you what to do in your day. Um, Essentially, this is how you're going to tell your future self, hey, future Devansh, this is what I want you to do. And you're going to put a time on the calendar and you're going to expect Devansh to either do the task or to follow up or to move the task to another time. But once you put it on the calendar, you need to have the confidence that your future self will go and execute that task. And so, yeah, the calendar is really important. Whenever you go to like a job or something, like this is how all of your time and all of your tasks are planned. And being able to use this and rely on this is very, very important. And it's a key, like we have to do this. Yeah, you have to get used to using your calendar. There's no way around this. So hopefully you've already set up your calendar. Um, yeah, and if you haven't, then there's a link here on how to do it. But we need to like become used to using our calendar. And let me just scroll up for 1 second and now make this code. So don't despair. Like your goal is not to stick to a given calendar at all times. The idea here is not for us to become calendar following machines. It's for us to maintain a thoughtful say about what we're going to do. So the calendar is not something that is, there's no, it's not a dictator, right? The calendar is just a guide. And so if you don't kind of follow it, don't, you know, feel bad or anything like that. But it is something that we really, really need and that we're going to use. Okay. So you have your calendar. The first step is planning. So this happens before our week starts. On the apprenticeship calendar, there's a meeting on Sunday evening. And that's the time that you want to plan what you're going to be doing in your week. Um, so ideally Sunday night, you can do it anytime before. If you haven't done it, it's the first thing you do on Monday morning. Don't start executing tasks until you've planned. Okay. And the way you do that is you start in this example in stage one, before we've kind of talked about other ways to think of tasks, just start with a list of tasks. You will be doing that in your worksheet. So the way you're going to do it is you're going to have some goals here, and then based on those goals, you're going to have tasks. So you already have some tasks here, and you'll basically, this is just your backlog of tasks that need to be done. And so you can start like here, and this is where ideally all your tasks will come and be ready for you, right? So you can use that as your list of tasks. So you have a list of tasks, create steps and success criteria for each task. This is really crucial. Yeah, okay. Here we go. Um, Yeah, so you have a task list. So create steps and success criteria for each task. This is a really crucial step. And this is a step that most often people skip, and even I skip, honestly. But it's a very crucial step. And so there's three things here. First is, what does success look like? Like, what is a good outcome for this task? Let's say your task is, oh, there's an example here. Yeah, but we want to write down what the task looks like so we're confident we can complete the task fully. Um, what are the steps involved in that task? So step by step, like what do we need to do? The reason we want to be this specific when you define your task is so that future you cannot get out of it in some way, right? So let's say your task is to pay the bills in this example. And let's say you just have a thing in your calendar that says pay bills. Like, what bills do I need to pay? Maybe I have three bills to pay, but your future self is like, oh, I've paid like one bill and that's enough. And so I'm, going to mark this task complete and move on. You don't want to do that. You want to keep your future self really accountable. And so you want to define very explicitly what it means to complete this task so that if it doesn't get done, then your future self can like pick that up and complete it. And also isn't tempted to like do half the task and move on. which it can do, which your future self might do if you're not very clear about what to do. Just think about your future self as the most unreliable employee in the world. Okay, you want to be really clear about what you're asking them to do. So you need to first define what does success look like. Then you need to define like what the actual tasks are, like what the steps to the task are. The reason for this is if you have a very ill-defined task, when the time comes for your future self to do it, they're going to panic, right? Because they don't know really what to do. So let's say your task is something like get a job, right? It's not actionable. You can't just get a job. What you can do is like, you know, write or clarify your resume or add your most recent project to your resume. Um, what you can do is like find 5 jobs online that you think you might like. So those are specific things that you actually can do. And you want to be very clear so that your future self isn't kind of overwhelmed by the fact that they don't really know exactly what to do, and then they flee into procrastination, right? Especially important for kind of harder, more cognitively challenging tasks. And the reason also you want to do this is at planning time, it'll force you to think about what that task actually requires you to do, which is like more like the manager role. And so you want to figure all this out before you hand it off to your future self. You want to be really clear about what the steps are. Yeah. And then while you're doing this, you might remember things that you need before you can do the task. So let's say you've planned to pay the bills on Wednesday, you realize you don't have the logins. Then you'll be like, oh, I need to like reset this email or ask this person, and then the task doesn't get done. Right. So whatever needs to be done in advance for that employee, your future self, to be able to complete that task, that is also something you want to think about. Yeah. So these are the 3 things you need to write down. Um, in this example, I've done it kind of just on paper. So the task is to pay bills. Success is that the gas, water, and electricity bills are paid, and copy of the receipts are put in the utility file. The steps are pay all 3 bills, print receipts, and put those receipts in the file. And maybe the prerequisite is you have to get the login for the gas connection, which you don't have, right? Eventually you'll want to do this in your calendar. I don't think I have a good example right now. Yeah, so you can see I don't always do it. You don't always have to do it for very simple tasks, but I would say in the beginning, just try and be very, very clear about what you want your future self to do. Um, Really important because yeah, just not defining tasks clearly is a really, really big problem. Yeah, it happens all the time. So really try to do this step. Okay. So now you know what the task is, what the steps are, what success look like. Now you need to figure out when you're going to do it. Okay. So you want to go and put it somewhere on your week, like assign the amount of time you think it's going to take, and then in that time you'll eventually do it. But yeah. So the step here is to like schedule that time on your calendar for each task that you plan to do that week. This requires you to think about when we have time to work, how long it might take, and what a good time of day and week is to complete that tasks. And if we have other commitments that are going to take up a portion of our week. For example, you might say, oh, I want to pay the gas bill at, or I don't know, some other example. Let's say you want to, you know, let's say you want to ask me something and you put that task for like 9 p.m. The possibility that I'll be available at 9 p.m. is fairly low. So you might want to do that in the day or during office hours or something like that, right? If you have a task that says rewrite your resume, like don't keep 15 minutes for it. You'll probably need a longer chunk of time. And the other things it'll do is help us get better at estimating how long we'll take to do certain things. And you'll have to take a guess, but then you can always refine that later. Um, Also, if you have some like, let's say, family wedding this week, and you know that you can't work Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, don't plan to do tasks on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, right? So it'll involve you thinking about how much time realistically you have in a day and a week, and kind of figure out how much you can get done in that period of time as well. Okay. Wow, I keep skipping. Uh, yeah, when you have lots of tasks, this way we'll be sure that we have the number of hours that we need to complete all of them. Uh, you want to be specific about which day and time you're going to do it, because then if your future self doesn't do it, then there's some kind of accountability that, oh, you were supposed to do this on Tuesday at 9 a.m. It's like, Wednesday, you haven't done it. But if you just say, oh, I'm going to do this sometime this week, it's only on Friday afternoon that alarm bells start ringing and being like, oh, I actually don't have time anymore this week. Um, It'll help you avoid conflicts. Uh, this is really crucial also. As you complete tasks that your manager self has assigned you, you'll build integrity, right? And integrity is defined as the ability to keep and make and keep promises. So every time you do finish a task that was on your calendar, you'll build the identity of someone who completes the work when it's due, right? Which is really, really important. And then, yeah, it'll just give you belief in yourself. And then essentially, like as you build more confidence in your ability to do things, you can make bigger and bigger plans. If you're not sure that your future self is going to like be able to complete really basic tasks, you just won't be ambitious in how you think. But when you know that your future self is going to finish the task, then you can be very ambitious in how much you plan, how long you plan. You can make bigger, longer term plans because you know that you can rely on your future self to complete and follow through with the actual work that's required to make them happen. Um, yeah, long-term planning only makes sense when we can trust our future selves to follow through, right? Okay, so that was the planning stage. So now, just to recap, you started with a list of tasks. You thought about what success looks like for each of those tasks. You thought about what the steps are for each of those tasks. You put them into your calendar at a certain time of the week. And this is the end of kind of this process, right? At the end of this, you should have something that looks a little bit like I haven't planned this week. I planned yesterday and then I planned today. But let's see, like, yeah, like something like this, right? You just want like a fairly well articulated idea of what your week is going to look like. So this could be the end of the planning stage is having something like this. Yeah, I think this set to call. Yeah. Okay. Execution. So in the overall, now you've completed planning. The time is now to start doing. So it's Monday morning or sometime during the week, and now it's time to actually do the work. So what do we do? Ideally, we have all the tools, information required, and an exact list of steps to do what we need to do. Uh, you should only have three things in front of you: the list of the steps to complete, which should be in your calendar, the tools that are needed to complete the task, most likely your laptop, and a timer that shows you how much longer you have to complete the task. So you have, let's say, you allocated 1 hour. You should like set a timer and be like, okay, now I have only like 30 minutes, and I need to like do all these steps. It'll create a little bit of urgency, and kind of that's all you want in front of you when it's time, right? In that time, we want to try not to do anything other than what we've planned. This won't always work, but if we set the intention and sat down with the list and the timer, that's all we can do, right? We can just set our future selves up for success. Sometimes still it won't happen, but that's something that we have to trust that we'll get better at, right? Um, yeah. If you're really struggling to stay on task, you need to go and like look at deep work and training your mental muscle. That's a different course, but yeah, if that is an issue that you're having very frequently, then the answer is somewhere in this course. Um, right. What happens if you don't complete your task? The most important thing is don't feel negative emotions. Okay. Don't start feeling guilty. Don't start feeling ashamed. Like there should be no negative emotional consequences to you not completing your task if you had set yourself up correctly. Right. The reason for that is then this just becomes a delivery mechanism for like shame and guilt, which is the opposite of what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is to become better at completing tasks. And these negative emotions are not going to help us. So if stuff doesn't happen and just like, okay, my employee tried their best, it didn't work, that's okay, we'll move on, right? We can't do anything about the fact that we didn't do the work that we were supposed to do. But what we like, don't try very hard not to like get into this cycle of guilt and shame and whatever. If you're really like if this is a big problem for you, we can kind of talk about this course which will address some of that. But yeah, just remember, if it doesn't happen, that happens, right? We don't want this system to become a delivery mechanism for guilt and shame. We want the users to get better. No single setback is a problem, it's a learning opportunity. um, The system is not meant to eliminate uncertainty or procrastination. Those things are going to happen. It's not meant to turn us into a calendar following machine. It's just meant for us to be thoughtful about how we use our time and recognize that both we and the world have evolving needs. So when stuff doesn't go as planned, there's a bunch of stuff you can do. You can move the task forward. You can just like not do the task if it was very time sensitive and it doesn't make sense to do it anymore. For example, if you had to call your mother on her birthday and you didn't do it on her birthday, I mean, maybe you can still send her a message. Maybe it's some like distant friend that you called, was supposed to call and it didn't happen, and it's a week later. Maybe you just forget about it and move on, right? Or you can move it forward, or you can, yeah, do any number of things. But don't try very hard not to feel guilty or ashamed or anything like that if stuff doesn't happen. Okay, so this is what you're going to do through the week. We're going to have kind of sessions to help you kind of stay accountable, and you're going to have an accountability partner, and that'll all come. But that's kind of the whole week is you just completing tasks one after the other. At the end of the week, this is the most crucial step. Okay, there's only one thing I'm going to ask to see from you guys, and it's the review step for your execution and other systems. The review step is where everything comes together. Even if you don't do anything in the week, if you just do this one review thing, that's what's going to build the meta system, the kind of feedback system. Okay. The one second. This this whole system relies on you doing the reviewing part. So even if you did nothing that week, it's fine. Just do the review. Okay. And the way we're going to do that is uh yeah. So at the end of the week, to improve how we're executing or to identify patterns that are throwing us off, we're going to review. This can be anytime after your work weekends. I normally try to do it on a Friday or a Saturday, but sometimes I work kind of on the weekend too. So, but anytime after your work is done, yeah, probably on a Friday evening or Saturday evening, whenever you're done work for that week, that's when you do this. We are going to have a notebook system in which we're going to do this, and that'll come separately. But the questions to answer are what threw us off our schedule this week? Did we plan this week? Is the first question. And if we didn't plan, that's okay, right? Then we just try to do that next week. But if we did plan, what threw us off? What were we able to complete? What were we unable to complete? The most, like a big question here is what can we change in the following week to better? Um, and then you're going to write down, how the tasks went. Did any of them kind of really drain you, excite you? What happened in those? But again, don't worry too much about this for now. There's a separate document that covers exactly what you need to write in your notebook to do the review stage of this execution system. So you can kind of take a look at this. But this is the most crucial stage. I cannot overemphasize this enough. This is the one thing that I really am going to insist that you guys do is just do a review of your execution system and your kind of later systems as well. But yeah, you need to do this review. That's what's going to make everything work. Even if you execute the whole week really well, if you don't do the review system, um, you're not gonna like feel the kind of joy of having done that. And so yeah, were you happy with? And essentially, you're asking, am I happy with how this week played out, and what can I do better? Those are the two basic questions. Okay, so that is stage one. Let's stop here. But this is what I want you to focus on at the beginning. If you're just kind of joining the internship, this is like a kind of primer for the execution system. It just covers uh, what you need to do and how you're going to build the system. As time goes on, what you're going to do is you're going to start setting goals. And there's a thing about how to set goals. And then your tasks are going to flow out of those goals, and those goals are going to come from somewhere else. And so there's a whole chain that's going to start. And yeah. So basically, later on, you'll have to start figuring out your own goals and tasks, which is a really kind of very important. In some ways, that's the most important thing to do is like figure out what to work on, right? Because time is like the one thing that we have to invest right now. And that's the most important thing we're going to have through our lives. And what do we want to be doing on a week to week basis is kind of that's what's going to define our life. And so in stage two, we're going to talk about how to set goals. Um, yeah. And then again, this part is the same. This is what the week will look like. Execute, review. And in stage four, three, four, and five, We're just going to get really regular. At that point, you're going to be able to change the system, right? So right now, I've defined it fairly clearly. After that, like just start changing it however you want. You can move your task list somewhere else. You can move your to-do list somewhere else. You can think about goals differently. You can change whatever you want, right? As long as you're getting that, review and you're doing all the stages, just change however you'd like it, but have an established system before you start changing it. Yeah, and that's a little bit about the execution system. Hopefully, this was helpful. Yeah.